All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Eel-Russian Project Authority meeting of July 21st, 2025. My name is David Rabin. I'm serving today as a chair of the authority. And with that, we'll have a call to order. I want to welcome Supervisor Madeline Klein from Mendocino County, representing the Mendocino County Inland Water Power Commission. Thank you for being here. Welcome to, for everyone, welcome to Sonoma. Look forward to alternating these meetings north and south, as it were, and I do appreciate you being here today. Another advancement in our work, so we do appreciate that. With that, I'm going to look for a roll call. Make sure that we have quorum. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. Not that I can't see. There's 5 of us here, and we're all here, but let's let the public know who we are.
Present.
Here.
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 Great. And we'll note today that all items requiring a vote for today's agenda, per the joint exercise of powers agreement, a majority vote for the board requires affirmative votes, at least one representative from each of the following: the Mendocino County Inland Water and Power Commission, and either Sonoma County Water Agency or the County of Sonoma. Just letting everyone know we're following through our bylaws that we all approved prior. And I'll look, if everyone has an opportunity to look at the agenda, and if we can get an approval of the agenda, we can move on. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda, or is there any comment about anything on the agenda?
Going to move approval of the agenda as is.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. And since we're all here and we all know who we are, we'll do a voice vote on that. All those in favor of the approval of the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Please say no. Hearing no opposition, that does pass unanimously with all present. We'll move on then to the consent calendar. There are 5 items on the consent calendar today, and I'll look to my colleagues if there's any questions, comments, or concerns on the consent calendar. Please go ahead.
Chair Rabbit, appreciate it. Just one item on the consent calendar, which was the minutes from the March 19th meeting. I was not in attendance, so I'll just recuse myself from that vote. Let everybody else move forward.
Okay, great. Any other comments on the consent calendar? Seeing none up here, I will go and see if there's any public comment on the consent calendar. Again, the consent calendar today there's some minutes. There's delegating some authority in terms of some of the public information items. Resolution regarding David Manning to become the first executive director of the Eel-Russian Project Authority. A resolution of the executive director to take appropriate actions in that role, and then the adoption of the required CEQA guidelines by reference. Is there anyone in the audience who'd like to speak to any of those consent calendar items? Thankfully, seeing no one rise, we'll bring it back to the board. I'll look for a motion to approve the consent.
I'll move approval.
We have a motion and
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. With that, we'll do another voice vote on the consent calendar. All those in favor of the consent calendar, items A through E, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Please say no. Hearing no opposition, that does pass unanimously with all present.
And if I can, just for the record.
And for the record, we're going to have Supervisor Gore.
Yeah, I'm just going to, so I'm a yes on B through E, and I am a abstain on A.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
All right, that gets us to the regular calendar, the meat of the day, and we'll move on to item number 5. And we have David Manning and Don Seymour, and up here on the dais with us, Corey O'Donnell. And I think I'm going to go to you, Dave, to start the show.
Thank you very much, Chair Rabbit and members of the board. In addition to the role as Executive Director, I am the Division Manager of Environmental Resources for Sonoma Water. We're going to give you a bit of a background, an update of where we stand with the new Eel-Russian facility, and some of PG&E's planning for their license surrender process, and then we will get into the water diversion agreement. So I think a lot of folks in the audience are probably, and you on the board are certainly aware of a bit of the history of the Potter Valley Project. It's been diverting water into the Russian since 1908. The current license was issued in 1983 by FERC to PG&E. On January 25th of 2019, PG announced that it no longer was going to seek a new license for the project as it was no longer economically feasible in their assessment. The license expired in 2022. FERC directed in 2022 PG&E to file a plan for the surrender of the license. By July 29, so very close to this date today, PG&E will file that surrender application with FERC. And the Eel-Russian Project Authority it has been implementing a plan of action to continue diversion after the license surrender and decommissioning process, and that's what we'll describe to you today. So I think everyone's intimately familiar with the facilities that PG&E owns and operates at Scott Dam and Lake Pillsbury, 11 or 12 miles downstream, Cape Horn Dam and Venarso Reservoir. What I think folks are becoming very aware of is the connection, though, of those projects to Cayuga Valley Dam and Lake Mendocino in particular, shown here in drought in 2014. The diversions to Lake Mendocino have declined over time. Historically, there were about 150,000 acre-feet a year. As environmental protections were implemented on the Eel River, that total amount of diversion was cut in more than half to about 60,000 acre-feet a year. And now we're receiving approximately 40,000 acre-feet a year due to some equipment failures on PG&E's project, as well as drought and the need for even more stringent environmental regulation. So the diversion volumes have gone down tremendously, and that's had quite an impact on Lake Mendocino and the reliability of water supply in the Russian River watershed, and it's an ongoing threat were the project to disappear, were we not to come up with a plan. So a group of partners in both watersheds came together. We call ourselves the Two Basin Partnership, with co-equal goals of improving fish passage and habitat conditions on the Eel River, but also continuing to maintain diversions from the Eel to the Russian for all the beneficial uses of that water in the Russian River. An outgrowth of that partnership has been the Eel-Russian Project Authority, as we're gathered here today, initiated in 2023 as a joint powers agency between Sonoma Water, Sonoma County, the Mendocino Inland Water and Power Commission, and the Round Valley Indian Tribes as a member of the board. We're created to divert this water, operate, maintain, construct the facilities to divert this water per the terms of an agreement that we will describe in just a few moments here. So just very briefly, I think most folks are very familiar with these images. This is the existing site of Cape Horn Dam, showing on the left-hand side of the image the diversion tunnel entrance. The new Eel-Russian facility, after the removal of Cape Horn Dam by PG&E, would involve the construction of a pump station, screened intakes to those pumps, lifting the water 30 or 40 feet behind a new concrete retaining wall into the existing tunnel diversion so that it flows from that point via gravity down into the Russian River. And this is sort of a fisheyes perspective as you're swimming upstream. If you're a salmon trying to make your way upstream in the Eel River, you would encounter just the remnants of the face of the dam and the fish ladder that used to exist there, and the diversion facilities itself tucked into, on this image here, the right-hand side of the image, but looking downstream, river left, sort of invisible to fish as they pass this site. So some preliminary cost estimates for the new Eel-Russian facility, approximately $5 million in design and permitting, the phase we are in now, a roughly $50 million capital construction cost. And then operations and maintenance costs are a range. And right now we're quoting them as between $7 and $12 million a year, but that depends a lot on some of the design elements, as well as the financing as we move forward. That annual O&M cost covers operations, administration, and insurance, bonds, which are a big uncertainty in the total cost equation, a contingency, and then a lease payment for the water rights and an annual restoration payment to the Eel River Conservation Fund. The revenue is grants, bonds, water user payments. As the next phase of the work, we'll be trying to determine the blend of those various sources and how they can sustain ERPA and the new Eel-Russian facilities operations. At this point, I'm going to turn over to my colleague, Don Seymour, the Deputy Director of Engineering for Sonoma Water, to describe briefly how the diversion functions. This is a level of detail that I think the last time we met, we did not describe to you. We described the facilities. We would like to give you an idea of how this diversion actually occurs or will occur per this water diversion agreement. So, Don.
Thank you, David. Good afternoon, Chair Rabbit, members of the ERPA board. So this table summarizes the diversion rules that were developed by Applied River Science, a consultant to the Round Valley Indian tribes. It's been vetted quite a bit with resource agencies and other technical members that have been participating in this two-basin solution. Some of you may have even seen it, but it's worth reviewing, going through one more time, going through today. So as you can see, it's divided into columns. So into seasons, the fall, winter, spring, summer. And I think one thing to point out is this has been described, the NERF has been described as a high flow diversion. That's not quite accurate. It's based on these rules that could occur in each season if the hydrologic conditions exist that are protective of the fisheries on the Eel River. And so each of the rows that are in those that are in between those columns are conditions that have to be met for the diversion to occur. And so the first one is the floor, and those floors vary by season. So, and you can see in the fall, it has a minimum flow that passing by the new Eel-Russian facility has to be at least 300 CFS before diversion occur. And the diversion can't drop the flow below that 300 CFS. And then each of the other seasons has its own distinct floor. In the winter, it's 250. In the spring, it's 125 CFS. And in the summer, at 35 CFS, as Dave would point out, is rarely there late in the summer. So diversions would not likely occur. Maybe June-ish, you see really wet years. The second column is the percent that can actually be taken when you're above that floor. And so when you take that, each of the seasons has its own percentage that can be diverted during those seasons. And so in the fall, it's 20%. In the winter, it's 30%. Spring and summer, it's 20%. And again, keep in mind, you cannot take that full 30%, for example, in the fall, if it was to take you below the 300 CFS floor. So you actually, for example, in the fall, have to be at least 375 CFS to take the full 30%. So next slide. And so this is just a generalized hydrograph that depicts how this would work. It's not a specific hydrograph on the Eel River, but as you can see, there's the red dotted line that represents that floor. You can see that it's starting in the spring, so it's at 125 CFS. You can see in June it drops to 35 CFS. The shaded area is representing what the flow is going by where the new Eel-Russian River facility would be. And then that black line represents the percentage that changes during each of the different seasons that could be actually diverted. And it shows what the flow would be below. That's representing what the flow would be below the diversion. The one thing that's not quite represented correctly on this slide is there should be a ceiling of 300 CFS, because you can see in those early springs, it's showing what the diversion would be well above, and it actually would be capped at that 300 CFS. And so this is got a little bit of background. It's got a lot of lines on it. I'm just going to try to spend a few minutes on it so everybody can understand it. So that black dashed line in the upper part of the figure, that represents the top of the forecast-informed reservoir operations pool. FIRO, as we like to call it, has been an initiative at Lake Mendocino since 2014. It's a partnership of the Army Corps of Engineers, Sonoma Water, a number of federal and state partners. And what it's resulted in is a pool of 11,650 acre feet above the top of the water supply pool. I'm sorry that line's not on there, but it represents this pool of water in the flood control pool that the Army Corps of Engineers has discretion to either retaining, or if conditions exist, releasing that water if it's not safe to retain it in the flood control pool. The blue line is representing actual storage in Lake Mendocino. And you can see in the fall, it's at about 40,000 acre feet, and then it goes up to the top of the forecast-informed reservoir operations pool. It goes well above. Those spikes represent water that's being released for flood control operations by the Army Corps because they can't retain water above that pool. And then it mimics the actual top of the Firo pool because it's just riding it up as it goes through the spring. The green line in this figure, the green dash line in this figure actually represents when water could be diverted under the rules developed by Applied River Sciences. And the gold shaded area is actually when diversions would occur, when water could be captured and retained in Lake Mendocino. As you can see, you see these first initial spikes in the fall because Lake Mendocino is pretty low and the conditions are being met on the eel, and you start seeing Lake Mendocino storage rise. It rises really quickly in the January timeframe. That's because the diversions are going on, but also there's some big storm events going on. And then once it pushes the storage above the Firo pool, you see the gold line just drops down and there's no more diversions occurring until the spring. And then in the late spring, the storage is just riding up along the top of the Firo pool, and the gold area is mimicking the rules of Applied River Science. And so under the rules, you could actually divert almost 86,000 acre-feet of water. But because of the constraints that exist currently, really Lake Mendocino being one of the few areas where water can be stored, potentially Potter Valley, there's some opportunities until additional infrastructure could be built, storage infrastructure. This is pretty much the limit, and you can see it's about 26,000 acre-feet, or 26,000 acre-feet. These two are very similar figures. They're for a dry year and a normal year. Under these 2 years, storage in the reservoir never gets up into the flood control pool, and so the NERF operations just mimics the diversion rules and allows the entire diversion to occur. This is basically the slide David showed a few minutes ago, historical diversions, just with one added column. That column to the right, so those are all observed, the three first columns, but the last column is modeled results showing what we think the average diversion could be, and it's about 30,000 acre-feet per year. So going from the 150 historically until 2006 to 2020, 60,000-ish acre-feet, currently about 40,000 acre-feet, and with NERF operations on average, it would be about 30,000 acre-feet. And again, lastly, one more bar graph. This is not, this actually represents storage in Lake Mendocino, so that these are modeled results, but that first bar graph represents the average end of the year storage. So the September end of the water year storage, September 30th, kind of represents when we're in our driest, coming out of the driest period. So it's currently with our current operations, that end of the year storage is about 57,000 acre-feet per year. With NERF operations, we project that the average would be about 51,000 acre-feet. With no diversions in the future, that drops to 25,000 acre-feet. And I just want to point out, Lake Mendocino has only been at or below 25,000 acre-feet a handful of times, 4 or 5 times. And that's generally occurred when we've had extremely dry winters going to December. So this is September 30th with 25,000 acre-feet. And when we've seen it historically, it's been more like the December timeframe. So that's a very, very concerning storage level. And with that, I'll pass it back to Dave.
Thank you, Don. So we'd like to outline some of the next steps here and potential schedule, and I will emphasize the potential nature of the schedule. A couple things are fairly well known, and that's by July 29th, PG&E filing that license surrender application with FERC.
Dave, can I interrupt you just 1 second? There was a lot of material covered, and I just want to make sure if there's any questions from my colleagues for anything that was presented.
Absolutely.
Could I ask Don,
Please.
Don real quick, could you explain so that people understand a little bit more about the difference between constrained and unconstrained in terms of the amount of water that might be diverted?
Absolutely. So we look at unconstrained being what could be diverted under the rules developed by Applied River Science. But if a lot of that water is not able, we can't retain it somewhere to save it for the dry season. During the winter, you know, we're all aware, Russian River has a lot of unimpaired flow in itself, and demands are really low. So when that water is being diverted, it's really not needed. And what the the need we see right now is increasing storage so it can be captured. Currently, Lake Mendocino is the one place where there's potential that some of this water can be stored. And I have to emphasize the reason for that is this initiative, Forecast Informed Reservoir Operations, and giving the Corps flexibility in retaining water in this FURO pool that's in the flood control pool. And so that constraint is, and you see that the gold line goes, the gold shading goes to zero. There's nowhere in the Russian River right now to store that water that could be diverted. That's in that black box. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I wanted to have you do that so that people could understand the difference between those two situations.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I just want to, go back to that slide that you showed without the diversion, with the diversion, and then the existing. So average modeling, Lake Mendocino storage, September 30th. Just want to confirm this and ask you to speak just a little bit to the Forecast Informed Reservoir Operations, the FURO project that allows us to hold more. Like, where's the status? I mean, I've received briefings, but I think it's important to talk publicly about where we're at with how much more water are we holding currently in Lake Mendocino at the same time of the year, and what's the timeline for us for the first in the nation rewrite of our operation manual?
So, FURO only leverages the flood control pool. And fortunately, we've had 3 very wet years in a row.
Yeah.
And in each of those years, the reservoirs retained an additional approximately 10,000 acre feet. Right now, Lake Mendocino is over 90,000 acre feet, almost at the end of the July, and it has like 92,000 acre feet, an astonishing amount of storage in it right now. So as I mentioned, that initiative began in 2014. It was the first pilot study. Others have popped up subsequently, and they've used a lot of those lessons learned at Lake Mendocino. I'm glad you asked this, Director Gore, that we are on the precipice of those FURO operations being formalized in a water control manual update that we believe will be inked by October 31st of this year. The Corps on the 17th just released their draft environmental document that's out for review. It's a 30-day review. And for comment, then they're going to have another 30 days to address comments, and then it goes to headquarters and getting the approvals necessary for the commander to sign that into law.
The modeling that you bring to the table right here with no diversion, with current operations and the delta, this 57 to 51,000, the 6,000 acre feet that some would say we're losing in through this process. It really, I'm always interested in individuals who have questions, concerns, because I think we all have. I mean, this is big stuff, but this really kind of goes to obviously south of the lake, doesn't go to Potter Valley. So there's always a question of like, what's our resilience measure? So let's say Ukiah Valley, the district that I represent in northern Sonoma County, which Cloverdale, Geyserville, Alexander Valley, which pulls with wells off of the rivers, down through Hillsburg. Hillsburg still pulls off. That's pretty much the largest aspect of this. The question I have for you is that if we are going from 57 to 51,000 in that area, where are we thinking that 6,000 is going to go? Is it going to go into conservation? Is that where we need to eat it up? Is it excess? Are we going to have to change any operations along the river? Or is this going to long-term be a part of our production side too?
So that 6,000 is basically just a reduction in the end of the year. I mean, the storage going into the following year, your carryover storage. So I look at the 6,000 as being just kind of whittle away a bit of the reservoir's reliability. So to capture that 6,000 and bring that storage level higher, it would mean bringing maybe additional, because it's just, there's no diversions in summer, so there's more tax on the reservoir. So it means if we can bring on more storage infrastructure to capture some of the water that could be diverted through the New Eel River project, that could make up some of the 6,000. Projects like that are going on in your district with Dry Creek Rancheria, the on-farm recharge project, that has potential. We did a water supply, water resource study of the Powder Valley. There's some opportunities there. So
Can you remind us what, September 30th, what's the allowable storage level?
in Lake Mendocino?
Yeah,
It's
a cap.
well, it's 111,000 acre feet.
Thank you.
And then starting October 1, it quickly goes down to 68,400 acre feet.
It's just, I know I'm working around it a little bit. It's just kind of like I'm looking for an analysis of what this practically means. Like, so on September 30th, at that point, we're still allowed to have 111,000 acre feet of water. We're going to model out that instead of 57,000, we're going to have 51,000. This is an average modeling out over time. This is not a date specific one. So as you say, the potential, I mean, we still, in many years, like a year like we have right now, we would be sitting on September 30th. We're at 92 or 93,000 acre feet now. By the time we hit September 30th, what do you think we're going to be at? Because I know you could probably be the only person who could answer this question.
I think we could be in the 80,000+ acre range, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that FERC has not approved a temporary flow variance that PG&E filed yet this year. And so last year that variance was approved in late June, which dropped Eel River transfers, not including PEID's deliveries, but just their minimum releases into the East Branch Russian River to 5 CFS from 75 CFS. And so this year we're still seeing over 75 CFS just in the release to the East Branch, and not including PVID's deliveries. So that's part of the really high levels in Lake Mendocino also.
Well, I appreciate it. I think it's fair to say that in a year like this does not have any impact on how the storage of Lake Mendocino going into later this year, next year. It's really in the drought years.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's this result of 3 exceptionally wet years, every year going in with a lot of carryover storage, and just, maximizing every year. We've been over 100,000 acre feet going into the summer. So we've just had some exceptionally hydrologic years too.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Director Gore. I would concur that the only person who could answer that question with any kind of certainty is Don Seymour.
Any other questions before we move on? Seeing none, thanks. I'm sorry. You're good?
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Dave. Thanks for that interruption.
Thank you, Chair Rabbit. So I will quickly go through some of our next steps and the potential schedule. And again, potential, and I can describe why. The 2 very imminent acts here by the end of July, but then we go into a period that involves more design, environmental compliance, which we'll hear about in a few moments, development of the sort of business plan and the economics for the new Eel-Russian facility, and a lot of other permissions and approvals that are required by PG&E. Some of those activities are conducted by FERC, some by the State Water Board, some by ERPA itself to get the permits in place for the operation of the new Eel-Russian facility. Coming up in the 2028 to 2030 timeframe, and it depends on how quickly those preceding actions occur and how efficiently they occur. It is the potential timing for the FERC surrender order to Pacific Gas and Electric. They will be the first ones to tell you that they have, if they receive the order in that time frame, additional steps like final engineering, more permitting, bidding, contracting to get through before they can remove the dams, as is their plan. Those dam removal activities, the restoration of the former lake bed for Lake Pillsbury, of the river in the vicinity of Cape Horn Dam, and the construction of the new Eel-Russian facility are all designed to occur more or less simultaneously. And the time frame is very broad there, really anywhere from perhaps 2030 to 2035. So I think it's just important for folks to understand that while there are some major milestones occurring right now, with the water diversion agreement we will describe in a few moments, with the submission of the license surrender application to FERC by PG&E, there's a long way to go before this project would become a reality and begin diverting water as Don just described. Sorry, Don. So I think at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Corey O'Donnell, Chief Deputy County Counsel for Sonoma Water, to describe some of the steps to develop this water diversion agreement and then run you through a summary of that water diversion agreement.
Please.
As you go into this, would now be an appropriate time to ask just a few questions on the lineup in between 2025 and 2028, or after you go?
I think it's appropriate to go now.
Would you mind going to the last slide?
Sure.
So just a couple questions. So July 29th, we all know that that's the date. That's been what's been promulgated publicly. The ERPA business plan, just for clarity with all of us, that is the actual implementation of what is the MOU, the memorandum of understanding that has been signed between all of us, that has these elements of payments and also whether restoration dollars, all these other things. I mean, even though there was a negotiation and a compromise, I'll say it at best as a compromise, there was nobody at the end of that agreement that was like high-fiving. Everybody was kind of, after 8 years, just kind of shaking hands and wondering what's next. But the business plan, I just want to remind myself that it is not a part of any FERC process. This is us creating a business plan amongst ourselves that can implement the MOU. Is that a correct way to say it?
That's correct. I would modify that to say implement the water diversion agreement, and I'm sure Corey will run through that. But yes, you are correct. That is how the Eel-Russian Project Authority and the new Eel-Russian facility sort of become a viable effort that's supported by water users throughout the basin. It's how this project pays for those operations and maintenance costs. Yes.
Yeah. The second part is that once PG&E submits into the FERC process, and obviously 2025 to 2028 is really dependent upon some kind of action. I mean, we can, some of these things like ERPA business plan, NERF design, preparing documents for CEQA, for the NERF, all these other things, these things can move forward without waiting for a response from FERC. There's other things that absolutely are time dependent upon whenever we hear back. Do we hear back in a month, or do we hear back in 13 years, right? So I just want to state this very openly, is what are the items that we would continue to put time and effort into and money into design at a point where we also don't want to overspend until we hear a response from FERC? How are you thinking through that right now?
So FERC will issue a surrender order to PG&E. That order, in order for the new Eel-Russian facility to be at a place where we can match the timeline of PG&E's surrender and decommissioning per that order, some steps do have to be taken in advance, particularly the completion of the design of that facility and compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act. That is a precursor to being able to get some of the final permits and operate the new Eel-Russian facility. The construction timing piece is really what's key. So in order for impacts to the river to be minimized, for the new Eel-Russian facility to be constructed, while there are still lands that are under the jurisdiction of FERC and owned by PG&E, this project needs to be included, as it is now, in the license surrender application, but then have satisfied all of its permitting requirements before it could be built at the same time that Cape Horn Dam is removed. So syncing up the efforts requires years of work in both planning and design to be able to implement when PG&E and FERC are ready to do so. And we have every indication from PG&E that they are going to continue on, regardless of when they hear back from FERC, their engineering steps, their environmental compliance pieces. So they are moving ahead, anticipating this action that is years away from FERC. And ERPA, I would submit, should be prepared to match that schedule and be ready to build when
I
PG&E
would
is.
just say, is there anything that we are trying not to spend money on until we hear a surrender order? Or are we going to be moving on all of those items 25 to 28, irrespective of hearing back from the FERC surrender license?
We're moving, I would suggest we move ahead on most of the design and environmental compliance pieces.
And some of that is already embedded into grants from.
Correct. So right now, to get from about a 20 or 30% level of design up to 60%, we've received a grant from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation for $2 million. That's a $3 million effort. It's a 65-35 cost share. Sonoma Water has been providing that cost share to this point. I think an item later on the agenda will speak to how those costs are shared among ERPA member agencies now and in the future. So yes, there has already been an effort afoot to advance some of this work.
Please go ahead.
Just a clarification, it says the NERF 60 to 90% design, and you just mentioned to get up to 60%. Where do you estimate that percentage is right now on that plan?
It is on the low end of 30%. So by late 2026, early 2027, we should be at that 60% design milestone. And then taking it that next step beyond is another year or two of work.
And also on the fifth bullet, I think that is the FERC prepares the NEPA document. Could you explain exactly what that means?
I can explain it only to the point that I understand it, which is not in a tremendous amount of depth. I will be quite honest. So FERC needs to prepare a NEPA document to cover the PG&E license surrender pieces of this effort, not the new Eel-Russian facility, but the dam removal and the decommissioning of any other facilities. There's almost a parallel environmental process, one for the new Eel-Russian facility and the Eel-Russian Project Authority, and another for PG&E. We're trying to take information from both those processes to make sure that the pieces needed to implement the new Eel-Russian facility are captured, but there are completely separate issues that will be addressed by both processes. So they really are separate, related but separate.
But FERC is preparing for NEPA, and the facility would be preparing under CEQA, right?
There are elements, there's one of the permits in particular needed for the new Eel-Russian facility to operate from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. NEPA would have to be satisfied for that permit to be issued.
All right, thank you.
Is that true that the PG&E would also have to satisfy CEQA as well as NEPA?
On the CEQA piece is yes, through the State Water Resources Control Board. So the State Water Resources Control Board, in issuing their 401 water quality certification, requires CEQA compliance. Oftentimes, they will undertake that work with financial backing from the permit applicant.
And perhaps, and maybe Corey can address this too, because one of the questions I had written down was two parallel CEQA analysis as opposed to one particular project, which is typically the way or not?
It can be the way. Sometimes it has to not be the way, depending on what the processes are and with FERC and with the State Water Resources Control Board, and then the fact that NERF will be operating under California law and not under the FERC jurisdiction. So later in our agenda today, there's going to be a brief presentation from Jessica Martini-Lamb on the approach to CEQA for the new Eel-Russian facility, and we can touch on some of that there. But this is also just getting started, and what we were trying to do, sitting as ERPA, is coordinate with PG&E and leverage all the work that they're going to need to do, not repeat work, but have them be in parallel and build on each other.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And that was where I wanted to hopefully get to as well, not repeat work and have that done by someone else's dollars. With that,
Thank you, Chair Rabbit.
back to you, Corey.
Yes, Corey.
And I guess we are back to me. Well, we had a very significant day in February up at the state capitol with the parties that have been promoting the two-basin solution, entering into a memorandum of understanding to advance the water diversion agreement, which is the agreement before your board today, and all of the signatory boards. Not to steal the thunder of IWPC, but I believe that you all approved the water diversion agreement just on Friday. And the other boards and commissions and partners, some of whom are sitting in the audience today, are all taking that up over these next few days as well. But the MOU itself set out the framework and the roadmap to reach the water diversion agreement that we're discussing next, and essentially lays out the terms that we all then pulled through into this much more detailed water diversion agreement. Significantly, part of the commitments that came through doing the MOU at the time was a pledge from the state of California for $18 million, $9 million for the new Eel-Russian facility work, and $9 million for the Eel River Restoration Fund to start that fund. So that was a big day and set the groundwork for what we are here for today, which is the water diversion agreement itself. Thanks, Dave. So part of the reason to do the water diversion agreement is to ensure that there was support in PG&E's application to FERC to construct the NERF concurrent with removal of the dams, and to allow for a diversion to continue. There are various elements to the water diversion agreement that build on all of the elements of the memorandum of understanding. In particular, there's various terms related to PG&E's water rights. The water diversion agreement proposes that PG&E transfer all of its project water rights to the Round Valley Indian tribes, who would then enter into a lease with NERPA on terms consistent with the water diversion agreement to allow ERPA to divert water to the Russian River Basin pursuant to the diversion rules and criteria. These are the ones that were laid out by Applied River Sciences. They are attached as an appendix to the water diversion agreement. And all other flow that would be available under the project water rights would be dedicated to in-stream beneficial uses and tribal cultural uses in the Eel River. In addition, there would be a payment under the lease of ERPA making an annual lease payment to the Round Valley Indian tribes consisting of two components. One would be a use charge of $1 million per year in consideration for use of the water rights and the operation of NERF. And a second would be a restoration payment of $750,000 per year to the Eel River Restoration Fund. For operations of the new Eel-Russian facility, as has been explained, they would not be under FERC's jurisdiction, but they would be subject to the diversion rules that you heard about earlier today, various performance metrics, and adaptive management, including monitoring. There would be an initial term of 30 years, starting on the date that NERF begins operations. There would be an additional 20-year renewal term if various conditions are met. Those would be $25 million raised for the Eel River Restoration Fund. Russian River users are increasing their resiliency, and that's some of the water storage projects that we've been talking about today that would have to take place in both the upper and lower, in the upper river. Compliance with diversion rules and no negative impact effects to salmon and steelhead recovery in the eel, among a few others, provisions that implement those three bullet points that I just described. And after the initial 30-year term and the 20-year term, either operations of NERF would terminate or it would be removed if the parties could further amend the agreement or enter into a new agreement. In addition, the water diversion agreement sets forth funding goals. These are goals, collective goals for raising federal, state, and private funds to support the two basins solution. $100 million for NERF and EEL before construction, and $100 million in the renewal term, split between the NERF and the Eel River Restoration Fund. So these are shared goals for the two basin solution. And finally, there are various dispute resolution enforcement provisions that range from, meet and confer all the way to arbitration. And Round Valley Indian Tribes has provided a limited waiver of sovereign immunity for purposes of enforcing the agreement. One final note on the agreement, the parties to this agreement are all of those who've been pursuing the two basin solution. PG&E itself is not a party to this agreement. But there are provisions related to what the parties propose to PG&E and support for PG&E's license surrender application and inclusion of the new Eel-Russian facility in their surrender application. So we're before you here today to ask for a resolution approving the water diversion agreement and authorizing the chair to execute the agreement in substantially the form that was provided today. That was the version that was approved by the IWPC's commission on Friday and will be considered by Sonoma County, Sonoma Water, and Humboldt County all at their board meetings tomorrow, as well as Round Valley Indian Tribes Council meeting tomorrow as well. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the chair for any questions.
Great, thank you very much. Before we go to public comment, are there any questions on what's been presented thus far? Please go ahead.
Well, the first one is I was just interested with Madeline and Janet, is any, beyond what we've seen, any update on the vote with IWPC and the discussion, and anything just as a report out that we should know about the conversation that you all had in passing this? We're going to be seeing this tomorrow as our Board of Supervisors. Just anything we should take into consideration.
Well, our board had been briefed over the last many months in closed session regarding the process moving forward with this after the MOU was approved. And while there are still a few questions, I think all of the questions on Friday evening were addressed, and our vote was a unanimous approval of the water diversion agreement. And I hope that that will be the result of the rest of the board meetings as we move forward this week.
Great, thank you. Anything to add? No?
If I just may,
Please.
is on the same note. So Sonoma County, we're reviewing it tomorrow. We know that. It's on the agenda for Humboldt, correct?
Correct.
And on the other side, the only other signatories are the other members of the water agreement, but they don't operate under JPAs like we do, joint powers authorities.
Right.
Or governing
correct.
boards, the board of
Right.
supervisors. Just one thing, which is that you still have that check that you were holding? Was that $18 million or something like that?
Well, I think Director Bonham voided it as we went out with a promise that he would give it back to us.
So that's, on that note, I'm just interested in, we talked about the Bureau of Reclamation dollars, the amount that'll go into design, just breaking down further from the 9 million for restoration, the 9 million that's been committed from California Department of Fish and Wildlife, talks about the creation of the NERF. That's not for design, that is for build out. And what is there any formal agreement that we have with CDFW to secure those funds under what timeline?
So those funds, there are no conditions on exactly how they can be spent to support NERF. The short answer is we do not have an agreement with Cal Fish and Wildlife yet. And one of the upcoming items on our agenda here is to plan more how expenses will be reimbursed that are incurred by member agencies. And certainly a budget will be developed for the benefit of ERPA's operations moving forward to develop the NERF, and that has not been prepared yet.
Fair to say that's one of the top priorities? Anytime you have a bird in the hand versus two in the bush?
Absolutely.
So we could anticipate that that'll be a priority for ERPA to bring back before our board is some kind of a, even if it's an intermediary agreement, even if it's a piece of paper, and we endeavor another memorandum of agreement that turns into a contract, something out of CDFW other than a picture from earlier this year.
Yes, we've been told by the department they would like to facilitate the distribution of those funds this fall. We don't have any details about
Right.
that yet, but that's
That's good to
certainly
know.
something that will be the subject.
Well, that's good to know. I
of
mean,
future
obviously, the question just becomes with a multi-billion-dollar budget deficit going into the state over the course of the next 5 years. I know this is dedicated funds. I don't, this is not climate bond funding?
It is not. That's
No.
not our understanding. Is that
Okay.
it is monies held by the Natural Resources Agency or the Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Thank you, sir.
I have a quick question regarding the restoration fund, as I understand it. So 50 years at the 750 mark, and I guess that would really be technically 30 years at that, then reopener, or that would continue for another 20. Either way, that's 37.5, right? The 9 that's going forward. Is the 9 going forward? And I know that the 25 commitment is from all sources, including grant sources, correct?
That's correct.
The 9 is part of that 25, or just kind of clarify those numbers.
Yes, the 9 million committed from the state would go towards the 25 million renewal term amount, but the annual payments by ERPA do not.
Okay. But
But
it is going to a restoration fund that is going to benefit.
Absolutely.
The
It goes to
stretch.
it goes to the Eel River Restoration Fund. It just doesn't count towards the 25 million goal
Okay.
for renewal.
But all told, if you count up all those numbers, it's 62,500,000 is what I got over that course of time.
Yes.
Yes.
And that does not include, of course, there's the Lake County and whatever they can do through their representatives, undoubtedly at state and federal level for any other specific restoration, correct?
There is a call to support
Yeah.
the cause of eel river restoration and development of the NERF through the agreement. And some of those funding targets, they aren't requirements for renewal, either in the initial term or the renewal term, but there are aspirational goals to continue to support the ecosystem of the Eel River and water resiliency on the Russian River as through this agreement.
Yeah. I think when you see it at 750 a year, doesn't seem like a big number, but when you pull all those numbers in, there's significant cash there that can hopefully make a real difference going forward. So I just wanted to make sure we acknowledge that. Is there any other questions before we go to public comment? Director Russ.
I just wanted to make a comment on Director Gore, mentioning like the use of the money that's coming from the state. I share that same concern, but there's been so much time and effort put into the WDA. I mean, I think that consumed all the time that we had, but I agree that we need to move ahead with that right away.
Yeah. Anything else? If it's okay with my colleagues, why don't we go to public comment? This is again on item number 5, which is the approval of the diversion. And if you can, keep your comments kind of succinct as possible, and we'll put 2 minutes on the clock, and we do the green, yellow, red, and please.
Good afternoon, Chair Rabbit and members of the board here. It occurred to me that the F in FERC is for federal and reclamation is a federal agency. So I'm wondering what was going to prevent the federal executive branch from pulling the rug out from this whole agreement if that happened to come up to the federal executive branch, for example, that stakeholders who wanted boating, recreation, et cetera, would appeal. And then I'm just curious what the vulnerability of all these plans are to federal meddling by the executive branch.
This?
Yeah, you can raise it there if you need to.
Okay.
I don't know. Can you hear me? Yeah. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Brian Johnson. I'm a senior policy advisor for Western Water with Trout Unlimited. And we're one of the organizations that's been working on this, and we're prepared to be a signatory, and we hope to have your support. As some of you know, we've been working for decades now on river restoration and also water supply and stream flow projects in both the Eel and the Russian River basin, and we're proud to be a part of this. Our support comes with a pretty clear recognition that quite a few of our members would prefer to not have a diversion and would prefer to see PG&E go ahead and fight over that. And I know there are voters in Humboldt County and probably some members of the Round Valley Indian tribes that feel that way. And we don't. We're very confident that that's not the right approach, and that we're better off doing something where we're working together to try to ensure water supply reliability and also fisheries restoration. And so we're prepared to put our name and reputation on the line to be a part of this, and we hope for your support. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Charlie, good to see you.
Good to see you. See, nope. Move up and down. Oh, I see. Okay, I'm just going to yell as well. Charlie Schneider from California Trout. I'm a senior project manager, and Cal Trout as well as a signatory to the WDA. I just wanted to take a moment to recognize all the folks that have worked so hard on this: Round Valley staff and consultants, Sonoma Water staff and consultants, IWPC staff and consultants. This really has been a monumental task over the past 6 to 8 months. And to echo some of Brian's comments, I really do believe that we are stronger in this together. The magic of this agreement is these diverse parties working together to ultimately fund this work that's created by the uncertainty of PG&E's decision. So I want to thank you all for all your hard work over the last couple of years now, and up to a decade for some of you. I'm a new kid in this. Would urge your support and look forward to continuing our work together. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Jennifer, good to see you.
Thank you. Yes, I don't think this is working. Good afternoon, Chair Rabbit and members of the ERPA board. My name is Jennifer Burke, and I am the director of the City of Santa Rosa Water Department, and I am also the chair of the Technical Advisory Committee, or the TAC, to the Water Advisory Committee to Sonoma Water. As such, the TAC consists of technical staff of the water contractors, cities of Cotati, Petaluma, Rohnert Park, Santa Rosa, Sonoma, Town of Windsor, Valley of the Moon Water District, North Marin Water District. We appreciate the time and effort that it's taken to negotiate this multi-party agreement, and greatly appreciate the informational updates that have been provided to us over the years from Sonoma Water. We agree that it takes a regional approach and solution to make this occur, and we do believe that this action in front of you achieves two of the WAC's interest statements in having a regional approach and having the diversion continue. That said, we would ask that you really consider continuing working very closely with the water contractors for informational updates and to provide feedback, as we are incredibly concerned about the costs of this project. And it's extremely important that we continue to remind everyone that we feel it's incredibly important to consider what the beneficiaries are and how those costs are allocated. We have been parties to the restructured agreement since 2006 and have been paying significantly for the restoration of the Russian River as well as the fisheries. And we want that to be recognized and also be recognized as this moves forward. So again, thank you. Great work. And we appreciate our continued relationship going forward. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. Is there anyone else here who'd like to speak? Going once, twice. All right, we'll bring it back to my colleagues. Any final discussion before I ask for a motion?
Chair, could we look to staff for some sort of comments in response to the gentleman's question around federal vulnerabilities?
Certainly. So I think if you've been tracking this, you've probably seen in some of the press, there's been a desire to have federal government interest take over operation of the project. To date, The agency most identified as being likely to do that is the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, the same agency that is funding the design for this stage of the new Eel-Russian facility. We haven't received any indications, nor has PG&E, in what they've told us, that the federal government is moving toward that direction to take over an interest in the project and operate it. What we understand to date is that PG&E is pursuing that FERC path, and that is the most likely federal interaction on the project. Frankly, we don't have any other information about that. I know there have been letters written by constituents in the Russian River watershed, both in Mendocino and Sonoma County, advocating for PG&E or this project to take a different path and retain the dams. We don't have any additional information beyond what's been reported about that. And we think the most likely outcome at this point is that PG&E succeeds in their effort with FERC to order the surrender and the decommissioning of the facility.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything? I do appreciate that. And Fred, I think we all understand and share the uncertainty that is the only certain thing that is at the federal level these days. But at the same time, we can't make policy based upon speculation. We have to make it upon what we know is true here and now. What we know is PG&E has made this commitment. They can't turn around, and we need to be prepared going forward. And with that, again, I'll look to my colleagues for a motion on the recommendation in front of us.
Move to approve the recommended board action.
So we have a motion and a
Second.
motion and a second. Thank you very much. And with that, again, we'll just do a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Please say no. Hearing no opposition, that does pass unanimously. Thank you again, everyone, and thank you everyone who's worked on this for months and if not years to get to this point. And it is really the beginning, still the beginning as we go forward. So with that, we'll move on then to item number 6. There's a couple of cleanup items that we need to take care of as well. This is the approval and direction to staff council regarding the reimbursement costs and expenses that we talked about earlier. And Corey, you're going to take this one, or?
I'll take it.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. As you just said, there's a lot of work to be done. This is just the beginning, and this item it addresses some of that. As you know, as a new Joint Powers Authority, the Eel-Russian Project Authority does not currently have any staff of its own and has been relying on member agency staff and consultants to do the work of the agency. This item would address those issues through directing or requesting that staff of the member agencies track their costs and expenses for employees acting on IRPA's behalf and for member agencies contracting for services on IRPA's behalf. As we've mentioned, and as your board already approved earlier in this meeting, these efforts include Sonoma Water staff acting as IRPA's executive director, technical staff, capacities for outreach and communication, NERF engineering design, and NERF environmental compliance and permitting. And you'll hear a presentation on kind of the beginnings of the environmental compliance piece in a minute. And Sonoma Water contracting with consultants to prepare that CEQA document, and then also the business plan, which you've also heard discussions about today, including from our TAC chair for Sonoma Water. So this item, there's a long, wordy recommended board action, but basically it says, please track your expenses and please come back to the IRPA board with some proposed agreements for this important work and for a reimbursement policy. And with that, I will turn it over to you for questions.
Thank you, Corey. Appreciate that.
Yep.
And I'll look to my colleagues again for questions on this particular action. Director?
I have a question. So just for clarification, so it says that the future policy on determining what work by IRPA's member agencies is subject to reimbursement. So this policy will kind of break that down as to what would be reimbursable and
Exactly.
what would be under the umbrella of working on the IRPA information and as it moves forward.
Yes, that is the idea, is to both have some proposed agreements that would address authority to take on certain work. For example, the environmental, like retaining the environmental consultant, and then also just a separate and standalone potential reimbursement policy that would talk about which expenses would be reimbursable and which wouldn't. And that's also an important item for IRPA to have the reimbursement policy in the future when it's going to look for other funds as well. And sometimes you're required to have a reimbursement policy in place for bonds, for example.
And that policy, draft policy would come back to this board
Yes,
for
sir.
approval?
This item would direct staff and council to work together to propose a policy and some agreements to come back to this board for your approval.
Thank you.
I take it that it's anticipated that some of that will be vetted within the individual organizations prior to coming to this board.
That would be correct.
Okay. Any other comments regarding? No. I think it's obviously it's important to get your business in order and make sure that, especially as a multi-agency entity organization, to make sure we all understand what we're getting in for and what we're having to pay for going forward. So I appreciate that. I will look for a motion. Well, first, let me go to public comment. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on this particular item? Appreciate that. Bringing it back to the board. There are 3 bullet points to this particular action, but this is to just track expenses come back for the policy at some point in the future, and I'll look for a motion to approve.
I make the motion to approve.
Great, thank you. Second by?
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. With that, we'll take a voice vote on this one. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Please say no. Hearing no opposition, that does pass unanimously with all present. Thank you very much. Moving on then to some informational items, a couple of updates on the CEQA process. We have Jessica Martini-Lamb, our Environmental Resources Manager from Sonoma Water, to talk about that. And then we'll parlay into the communications update with Mark Milan from Data Instincts. Jessica?
Good afternoon, Board. I'm pleased to be here today to provide an informational item on the California Environmental Quality Act process update for the new Eel-Russian facility. So Sonoma County Water Agency staff and environmental science associates have begun developing a draft scope of work to address the California Environmental Quality Act compliance for the new Eel-Russian River facility on behalf of IRPA. We anticipate that an environmental impact report that evaluates the construction, operation, and maintenance of the new Eel-Russian facility will be prepared. The initial work anticipated will include clearly defining IRPA's project to distinguish it from PG&E's license surrender project, and specifying the foreseeable future diversion analyses that will characterize the change in flows in the Eel and the Russian rivers, as well as evaluating effects on fisheries and biological resources, cultural resources, recreation, agriculture, and other studies that would be needed to address the project's potential environmental impacts. We anticipate that Applied River Sciences will work directly with the environmental science associates to help prepare a technical memo on Eel River flows, the ecological effects, and diversion rules to support the CEQA analysis. Next slide, please. And as described in an earlier item, our draft scope of work will anticipate the need for close coordination between IRPA agency staff and the State Water Resources Control Board, which will be acting as the CEQA lead agency for PG&E's Potter Valley license surrender project. We anticipate leveraging the State Water Board and PG&E's CEQA analyses to help us clearly identify effects associated with IRPA's discretionary action. We're anticipating that once work under CEQA is begun and initiated, it'll be approximately 24-month process. And currently, the estimated cost for the CEQA process is $1.3 to $1.5 million. And that concludes my report.
Great, thank you very much. I'll look to my colleagues for any questions for Jessica on the CEQA side of things. Please go ahead.
On the, you mentioned that PG&E will be doing a CEQA study as well, and it'll be in close collaboration or simultaneous with the ERPA CEQA. How do those, is there any overlap there, or how are those going to work, concurrently?
Yes, so Pacific Gas and Electric will need to obtain a 401 water quality certification from the State Water Resources Control Board for their decommissioning. So that will be the subject of the CEQA document that the State Water Resources Control Board will be lead agency on. So as David mentioned earlier, it'll be important for these processes to be sort of prepared and aligned, so the work is as concurrently completed as possible, so that when PG&E has all of its permits in the ready for their decommissioning process to begin, ERPA will also have all of its permits in hand to begin the construction work that will happen at the same time. So those things will have to be pretty closely aligned.
Are those documents going to be similar?
So the CEQA documents may have some similarities, but they will be different in terms of the projects that they evaluate. So this PG&E's decommissioning process will be looking at the construction-related effects of decommissioning, while the ERPA construction will have some portions of ERPA's constructions will be addressed in PG&E's CEQA project because they will be occurring within the same area. The actual construction of the NERF facilities, as well as its operations and maintenance, will be addressed in ERPA's CEQA document.
That may include projections as the ERPA moves forward?
Yes, in terms of
their
future
design.
operations.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right, thank you for that clarification.
Great. Is there any other questions on the CEQA analysis? We'll go ahead and take public comment after the communication. These are updates, not action items. So we'll go ahead and Jessica, if you're done, we'll turn it over to Mark and talk about the communication, and then we'll take public comment one last time on this item.
Great. Thank you, Chair Rabbit and Board. Good afternoon. Mark Milan with Data Instincts. We're public outreach consultant. We've been assisting Stuart Tiffin, Public Information Officer for Sonoma Water, and staff with providing information to the public about ERPA and also the new Eel-Russian facility. This includes background information on how we got here and estimated schedules, both past and in the future, as well as providing topical information, fact sheets about the project. So our effort has been included in maintaining a detailed website and also responding to media inquiries. Next slide, please. So here's a page from the website. The URL is eelrussianauthority.org. You can see on this particular page, it has a lot of prior information, reports and studies that have been conducted, and you can be certain that in the future we'll include new ones as they evolve. It also has a page of frequently asked questions that people may be concerned about, as well as maintaining meeting minutes and agendas like today's meeting. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned earlier, fact sheets, here's a couple examples. One is an overview of the project, provides some history and background and what are some next steps. And another one about water supply, how it will be affected by the diversion under various weather conditions, some of that Dawn touched on earlier. And as we move forward, we'll be covering other topics as well, especially as we hear from folks in the community. So please be assured we will continue to provide pertinent information as the project proceeds. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. And I will look to my colleagues. Any questions regarding any of the communications updates? No. We're good? With that, thank you. Thank you for all the work, both of you. And with that, is there any public comment on any things that were said? Fred?
As long as I came over, I might as well say something. I was curious about the CEQA process. I assume that it's an EIR, and I was wondering if the timeline and expense accounted for potential stalling of the CEQA process.
Thank you for that. Jessica, could you add to that?
That is something that we have discussed in terms of developing the scope of work to anticipate that the overall timeline could get extended if in case there are delays, especially as PG&E is moving through its process. But we are trying to account for that in developing the agreement and maintaining the costs within the amounts that will be agreed to in the final agreement.
Is it safe to say that PG&E's environmental documentation would be more complex than what we would be looking at, even though ours is a significant diversion project?
I would expect their CEQA document will be more complex because they will be accounting for the full decommissioning sort of construction-related impacts. So things like developing the cofferdams, placement of cofferdams, dewatering, all of those sorts of impacts will be evaluated in PG&E's CEQA document.
Yeah. So scheduling wise, as long as we line up, we probably have a cushion because of them. Of course, budget wise, it may be a different matter, but thank you for that question. Is there any other questions on any of the communication and or CEQA updates that we received? Seeing none and seeing none from anyone up here is as we move towards the end of I will go to public comment on items not listed on the agenda. And there's no one standing. And thank you for that. We will get to the end of our meeting here and have a look for any last minute announcements from any of my colleagues. Vice Chair Pauly.
Yes, I just want to take a minute to report on an event that's really an important part of our regional efforts to improve water supply reliability. Earlier this year, Mendocino County Inland Water and Power Commission signed a feasibility cost sharing agreement with the Army Corps of Engineers to explore increasing water storage in the Upper Russian River watershed. And we are very pleased that the Lytton Rancheria has joined us as a non-federal sponsor of these studies. And I'd particularly like to thank the Round Valley tribes for supporting our efforts with the Army Corps of Engineers to study improved water storage options, including potential modifications of Coyote Valley Dam. And one of the reasons I asked Dawn about the difference between constrained and unconstrained abilities to store water is because of this. If we can improve storage in the upper basin, then it reduces the constraints that we have to take water from the Eel River as it's available to us in a larger volume. So I think this is a really important another step that we've taken, and I hope it's successful.
Great, thank you. Anyone else have any announcements for the good of the order? Just want to say thank you very much again to everyone. Thank you for those attending today. I think it was said earlier, it does feel like this has been going on for a while, but really we are in the early beginning stages. And I know that there is going to be a lot of work on parallel tracks going forward on many pieces, whether it's storage and Coyote Dam. Hopefully we're successful there as well, and moving forward for the building up the resiliency within the really 4 counties, I believe, 4 that we're engaged in going forward. So I do appreciate that, and I appreciate all the staff work. Look forward to meeting later at our next meeting up in Mendocino County. So thank you for the work today. Thank you for being here. And with that, we are adjourned. So